Before we go into creating more geometry and also moving that geometry around, modifying it and analyzing it, I want to introduce the concept of vectors, which is quite the important concept, and it's another concept that is not really present in Rhino, that you usually don't really use explicitly in Rhino. Of course, vectors are an integral part of the geometry processing in Rhino, but often it's you simply define points, multiple points, instead of defining vectors directly. So in order to create vectors, and in order for you to understand what vectors are, I will simply show you and basically compare them to points, because vectors and points are quite similar. So if we go to the vector tab, where we also had our construct point component, if we go further to the right, we will find the vector xyz component. And this is the one that we will place on our canvas. And here you can already see that it actually looks quite similar to our create point or construct point component. And I will also add that one to the canvas. So let's take the construct point component. And then I will add some number sliders that allow me to change these coordinates. So for both of these components, I have an x coordinate, I have a y coordinate, and a z coordinate. On the vector, this is just, named a component instead of a coordinate, but it's basically the same thing. So let's add a number slider that goes from 0 to 100. And I will connect the number slider to both x inputs. I will take another number slider by simply copying it and connecting it to the y inputs. And I will take another number slider and connect it to the z input of both components. So if I now change these sliders, you can see our little preview point changing locations. However, I do not have any preview for our vector component, and I cannot enable a preview if I right click on it. In order to preview vectors, we will need to use another component, which we can find under the display tab. So up here we go to display, and we have our vector display component, which is all the way to the right, one of these with the red arrows. And if I place this one onto our canvas, we will find that we have a vector input and an anchor input. So I will connect my vector input, and for our anchor, I will just add a panel for now, and I will add 0, 0, 0, which will just give me a point at our origin. And so now you can see that what is being displayed is basically an arrow. And this arrow points to the exact same location as our point is located. So as you can see, it's basically doing something very similar. It's taking an x coordinate, in this case 23, so 23 in x direction, then 45 in y direction, and then 49 in z direction, and basically marks a certain location. However, our vector is more concerned with the direction and a distance, whereas the point really marks a specific location in space. So we always use points if we want to say, hey, this is the location in space that we actually want to mark, that we want to go to, that we want to use as our input for further processing. And we use vectors if instead of being concerned with the location, we are more concerned with this is the direction that we want to go, and this is the basically how far we want to go. And our vector can then also be basically used as an offset from any point that we want. So if we use a different anchor, not just 0, 0, 0, but for example 0, 0, 10, now we can see that this vector basically starts at a higher point and also goes to a different location, but it still has the same values. It's still doing the same transformation, but just uses basically a different base. This might be just a bit abstract. If you remember back in math class, vectors are also basically sometimes interchangeably used as a word for a certain point in space. So sometimes this terminology can be confusing, but in Grasshopper, all you need to remember is a point is a location in space and a vector is a direction that can be used as an input or an offset to other kinds of geometries. Just to make this a bit more clear, because it's probably still a bit abstract, I will use a small example where we simply move a piece of geometry by utilizing a vector. So I will create a circle by going to the Curve tab, and under the primitive section, I will add a circle component. I will copy one of the number sliders so that I have a radius input, just so that we have a bit more, a bit larger radius and something that we can, that is just a bit easier to see. And then I will add a move component. And the move component is located in the transform tab, and all of the components that we can use to modify locations and also scales of geometry is found in the move tab. And under the Euclidean section, we have our move component, which is these 2 points connected by an arrow. And I mean, this already looks like a vector. And here we have 2 inputs. One is the geometry, and our geometry will be our circle. And we have another input that is motion. And just to remind you, if you hover over any kind of input, you will already see what kind of data this input expects. So in this case, it says translation vector. The default is 0, 0, 10. So it just expects a vector. And I will use the vector that we have created as our motion input. And here we can see that this circle was now moved from where it was created in the direction of our vector, and is now located right here. Let me put this back to 0, 0, 0, just so that's not confusing. So this is our vector, and we've now created our circle from it. So there are other ways of putting a circle at a specific point. You maybe already have seen the plane input, where we could basically do something similar. So we could also define basically our base for our plane instead of moving it afterwards. But I just wanted to show you how a vector is used, and how a vector is used as a direction and a distance to move and translate geometry from one point to a different point.